Wanda, you have dreamed problems that developed in your body a long time before there was anything the doctors could find. Would you like to talk to us about how you've been able to diagnose your own symptoms through dreams?
My first dreams were probably 20 years before the diagnosis of my illness, and then 2 years before I began to keep a journal. But I still didn't understand the dreams. The understanding of them and the dream themselves were not in sync. And it was not until in 1990, just a few months before I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I began to have dreams of packing for 2 journeys, and my intuition began to tug at me because these dreams were telling me that I had to pack for a physical journey, for a trip that I was taking to Africa, and then for a mental journey, a spiritual journey. But I still didn't quite understand what was happening. And I went to Africa, and while I was in Africa, I had a big dream. And in that dream, my father came to me, and he brought with him a doctor dressed in a white coat. And the other dreams had just been tapping me a little bit on the shoulder. This one announced itself in very, very direct language. My father turned to me and said, "We're leaving now. You have breast cancer."
And your father had died some years before?
Yes, my father had died a year before, as a matter of fact.
So, after a long history of dreaming in a symbolic and general way about what might be developing in your body, it was the visitation from your departed father in a dream,
yes,
that gave you the name of your disease and led you to the doctors, who subsequently were able to find the symptoms.
Yes, and he was panicked in the dream because I wasn't getting it, and it was time for me to get it.
All right. When the doctors found that you had breast cancer, because you insisted on them looking again and again and again because you'd had the dreams of warning, including
Yes.
the dream of your departed father, you found as you went through the process of treatment and recovery that your dreams gave you images that helped you to heal.
Yes,
Can you
they did.
talk a little bit about how we can take images from our dreams that can help our own bodies to heal and your experience of that?
Well, I was blessed with wonderful doctors to begin with. And the first doctor, the one who was going to perform the biopsy, sat with me in the office and he said, "You can do something about this." I had not described dreams to him, but he understood in some way that I had an ability to do something before the larger biopsy. We had already had a small biopsy. There was a problem, and he understood that it could be a serious problem. I went home that day very frightened. And my dreams at that moment seemed to catch up with where I was, or at least I was catching up with them. I understood them now. I fell asleep on the sofa, and I had a dream in which I saw a cone sponge breast in the water. And at first, it was turned toward me. I picked it up, and I didn't understand what I was supposed to do with it. And a voice that I didn't understand where it came from said, "Turn it over." I turned it over, and I was looking at the back, and I saw the exact location of the cancer tumor, and it was dark, and there was a little vial inside it, and I was able to squeeze the cone sponge-like breast in the water and squeeze the dark liquid out. And I awoke from that dream, and I realized this is what he was talking about. Maybe not in those specific terms, but this is how it translated for me. So I was able to take that dream, and I began to use it day after day between the first biopsy and the second major biopsy. And I used it as a working image, an active image for healing. And I mentally started pulling the cancer back toward the tumor and using the image of the sponge breast and the little vial to squeeze the dark liquid into the water and just pull and try to contain what was there until something could be done about it.
So you feel, and maybe your doctors felt also, that through working in this way with this image, you're able to reverse the process of the metastasization of the cancer, the spreading
Yes.
of the cancer cells throughout the body, confine it to a specific area where it could be dealt with and contained.
Yes.
This was the effect of this particular dream.
Yes.
And as I recall, you had some other dreams, one in particular, which helped you to grow health for the body as a whole. I think one of those dreams was called the field of body parts. Would you like
Yes,
to tell us about that one?
this was after I was already going through chemotherapy, and my oncologist had said, "The day will come when you know you're healed, and you will be able to stand back and say, 'This is over. The cancer is gone.'" And I was waiting for a dream like that, and I think I actually had several, but the one that spoke most clearly to me was a wonderful dream in which I saw an entire field of body parts. Each row was labeled. There were tendons and muscles, there were bones, there were all the things that I need, all the organs, and I was able to go up and down this field, and I was able to select things and rebuild a body. And just before I rebuilt the body, there was a big container of all sorts of herbs and hyssop, and I cleaned all of these parts, and I purified them, and I put the body back together. And I'd already been using all of my dreams as active meditations, so this one became a very powerful meditation for healing for me.
This is a tremendous, shamanic experience. It's typical of the shaman's experience of finding that his or her body is ravaged, torn apart, and they have to put it back together again. But it's also got a wonderful everyday modern quality. We go to auto parts stores. You get to go to a body parts store in your dream.
Yes.
Rinse off, what you need to use and put it into your body, and your body becomes well as a result. That's very cool. I mean, it's very sad that more of us are not aware of our ability to luck into a source of healing of this kind. What would you say to people who are in need of healing and recovery about how they might be able to harvest images for healing from their own dreams?
Well, I think first you have to record them, and I think they're there. And you ask for a dream. I found myself as I moved through surgery and chemotherapy, and asking can be a simple thought process. It can be writing something down and tucking it under your pillow, but you go to sleep at night and you say, here is where I am in this process, and this is what I need. And you might not receive the dream that night. Sometimes I wouldn't, but several nights later I would receive the dream that I needed. And in the process of writing them down, I was able to keep a record, and then I was able to find that dream when I needed it. And sometimes I would have the dream I needed for the future, and sometimes I would have the dream that sort of caught up with where I was then. But I always received what I needed when I asked for it.
Now, some of us, like you, find that we need major medical intervention, and your dreams guided you on what kind of intervention you had. You had the modified radical mastectomy and the chemotherapy and so on. One of the fascinating and moving things in your story that I think can help so many people through your wonderful book is that you learnt how you could apply your dreams to helping your doctors to heal you when you needed that medical intervention, and in the process you could limit the side effects and you could hasten the recovery program. And you call this, in the book you've written, the healing cocktail, marrying the best of modern medicine to the techniques of our active dreaming process. Could you comment a little bit for anyone who might be faced with the same situation on how we can use dreaming and the techniques of active dreaming when we do need medical intervention?
Well, interestingly enough, the first day I was walked through the room where I would be receiving the chemotherapy, a young nurse called the drugs that I would be receiving a cocktail. And that image stayed with me. And that night I received a dream in which I was sitting in a chair, very much like the chemotherapy chairs, and there were vials of toxic chemicals that were hung on a tree, just like the chemotherapy room. But instead of poisons, there were wonderful, life-giving energy substances in those little bags, and they were going into my body. And I awoke and I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do when I'm sitting in that chair. So I went back when I finally did have to sit in that chair, and the vials of toxins were being placed one bag after another. One would go through, and then they would put another bag on the tree. I used that dream. And I was using both. I was using all of the medical technology that was available to me, but I was determined it was going to be something that revitalized and healed me, not something that made me weak and sick.
Yes. And you think about what dreaming has meant in your life. What can you tell me as your bumper sticker?
I dream my life.